So while all of this is happening, like the snowball is getting bigger. But once he got there, police was already gone. September 4th, 2021, Alex calls 911 and hit him with the puppy eyes. And he was like, oh, shoot. Okay, whatever. Let's go. Somebody's after them. You save your reputation no matter what. So just when we think it can't get no worse, right? But guess who he saw? What's up, Team Jazzy? It's your girl, Jazzy J, and I am back with the, oh, shoot. I'm not going to say mukbang. No. We're not doing a mukbang today. We are only doing a true crime case. I actually put a poll out to see if you guys like true crime better, mukbangs better, or both together. So today we are back with another true crime. So today's true crime is unfortunately about 5 deaths to a connection of one family man. So of course there was this beautiful, rich family in a small town of South Carolina. It was mom, dad, and 2 sons. And in this small town, everybody seemed to be close. However, there was unsolved deaths and scandals that were turning into cold cases, and it caused citizens to secretly reach out to private investigators, and it all circled back around to one family man.
Monday night, as soon as I answered the phone, I knew something was wrong. No, man. He just told me. He said, come as fast as you can.
This is the case of the Murdaugh murders. So centuries ago, there was a man named Randolph Murdaugh who started a law firm, and it carried on. His children also continued this law firm, and then his grandchildren continued this law firm, and it just built up into this massive blessing for a family. And it was 3 generations of lawyers, big time lawyers, and they all had the same name. There was Randolph Sr., Randolph Jr., Randolph III, Randolph IV, and it turned into this great thing. And once it got down to Alec, he didn't necessarily take on like the exact footsteps of his father, Randolph III, but he did work in the law firm, and he made enough money to be able to have 1,700 acres of land and this beautiful home and 2 private islands. And they were the it family. They were definitely a family of influence and riches and power. They were the cool parents. Like I said, they had 2 sons, and all of their friends always wanted to come over. It was labeled as the house that you'll never get bored at. That's how many things there was to do. So the name of the law firm is called PMPED, and the family as a whole was such a powerful family, like filthy rich. And you know what they say, money can turn people or family jealous. So Alec had 2 brothers. His oldest brother was Randolph IV, who followed in his father's footsteps, and he worked at the law firm as well. And then there was his younger brother, John, who didn't follow in his dad's footsteps. He just decided to get into renting equipment out. So instead, he opened 2 equipment rental businesses. But his brother Alec, who we are going to shine today's light on, such a big influence. He had a beautiful wife, beautiful sons, a beautiful life. And the sons had their girlfriends, and everybody was just a big happy family. They had an airplane, for heaven's sakes. They had the best vacations. They went to Kentucky Derby, professional basketball games, deep fish diving. They were family goals. I mean, lit parties, smelt like money, looked like money. Like, who could ask for a better life? They had a housekeeper who took care of the house, and she took care of the kids. So the 2 sons' names is Buster and Paul. When Buster and Paul got older and they started to get into small trouble with doing what boys do, instead of calling the police, they always called their grandfather, who was this top-notch lawyer. I told you the background. Top-notch lawyer, and that was their savior. He was the hero. You don't call the police. You call Grandpa Randolph. So the oldest, Buster, he was doing very well. He graduated from Warford. He was in a fraternity, and he was on his way to law school. He actually was in law school, following the steps of his father. Now, Paul was still young. He was very adventurous. He was still in high school, but he was very adventurous, and he had a group of friends that he was very close with, which was his girlfriend, Morgan, and then his best friend, Anthony. His best friend, Anthony, had a girlfriend named Mallory. And then his best friend, Anthony, had a cousin named Connor who had a girlfriend named Millie. And all six of those were three sets of couples, and they were always together, always having fun. They were all in high school, and the girls were very close. The boys were very close. The girls actually worked at a retail store, so they were with each other in school, after school, at work, and then together with their boyfriends. Now, Paul was the baby of the family. So just imagine, y'all know how that goes. Whether it's a rich family or not, the baby of the family gets away with everything. The world revolves around them. They're hardly, rarely, ever told no. So just imagine a rich family who has the younger brother, the younger sister. So one time, Paul and his girlfriend Morgan got into a car accident, and Morgan, like any normal person would do, calls 911. Paul takes the phone from her, hangs the phone up, and throws it. He takes his phone out and he calls his grandfather, and then he calls his father. Once they get there, they immediately remove all of the guns out of the car. They remove all of the liquor out of the car. And then they explain to Morgan why she should never, ever call the police. You always call the grandfather first because, he's the one that makes everything disappear. Not to mention, Paul is very young and he doesn't really have responsibilities, and he's spoiled. So, your parents is going to be right there. But that's the same way that his friends even treated him, because like I said, it carries over into your social life. And anytime that Paul got drunk, they looked out for him, and they made sure his seatbelt was on, and they never told him no. He was very proud of his life, but more specifically his boat. So February 2019, everyone gets invited to a oyster roast. And an oyster roast is exactly what it sounds like. Everybody comes together and they roast oysters, and it's just a big old party. It's an excuse to have a party, especially to the younger crowd. So there was two people out of the whole friends group. There was two people that didn't want to go. Anthony didn't want to go only because it was cold, and his girlfriend Mallory begged him and hit him with the puppy eyes, and he was like, oh shoot, okay, whatever, let's go. And then it was Morgan who didn't want to go also, and the reason why she didn't want to go was because she had just broke up with Paul. Now, the reason she broke up with Paul is because he was a entitled narcissist, which doesn't surprise me because he's the baby of the group. He's not used to meeting people in the middle. He's not used to considering other people's feelings or compromising, and that can affect any relationship, especially when the man doesn't do that. I mean, the woman should do it too, but okay, moving forward, she broke up with him. And her support system, which was the girls of the group, Miley and Mallory, they really helped her do this because they started to see things. They started to see he would break up with her over the weekend and then get back with her. He even hit her one time. They were in a hotel room and they were going to sleep. And in the middle of the night, he kept kicking her. And she was like, stop kicking me. Well, he had something better for her. He got on top of her and started hitting her. And so it was just, he wasn't ready. He didn't have emotional intelligence, and he just wasn't ready to be dating. It seemed like he shouldn't even have friends. He needed more help in the social life. But because everyone loved him because of his last name and who he was, there was really no consequences to ever be learned from anything. And Morgan was a victim to him. And they're so young. So they were so young at the time. So I hate to talk like that, because he really didn't know what he was doing wrong. It was how he was brung up. And it felt good to verbally be abusive. And Morgan would deal with it until her friends, Mallory and Miley, was like, we don't get treated like that, and we are in relationships too. Mallory, more specifically, was such a supportive friend to Morgan. She would make sure she sent her funny videos to distract her, or she would send her text messages telling her how worthy and amazing of a person she is. At work, she would dance and clown around just to lift her spirits. And so when Paul is trying to convince Morgan, I know we're broken up. I know you don't want nothing to do with me, but all your friends is going and I'm driving my boat. We're gonna drive the boat to the oyster party, have a good time, and go back home. Everybody's going, and I don't want you to miss out on any fun with your girls. And so Morgan's like, okay, you got a point. I don't want to miss out on any fun either. What the heck? Let's go. So they purchased some liquor and everyone got on the boat to pregame, headed there. They got to the oyster roast and had a blast, but they had a little bit too much fun. Everyone else that knew that they were about to get on this boat had asked them, do you think it's a good idea that you guys drive this boat home since you're just so wasted? Maybe y'all should either stay here or call an Uber. And Anthony thought it was a good idea. Actually, everybody in the group thought it was a good idea except for Paul. He was so proud of his boat, and it's his boat. He knows what he's doing, and he's not leaving it behind. Paul had the mindset of a baby, and if he didn't get his way, he was throwing a tantrum, but we still want to make sure that he's safe, so we need to follow him. Like, we come together, we leave together, and since Paul wanted to take the boat, we're going to take the boat as well. So now all of a sudden, as drunk as everyone is, they just want to get home at this point, and it's cold. Connor and Paul decide that they want to make a pit stop and go to another bar to get more drunk. And no one else was in agreement with this. However, Paul wanted to do it, so it was going to happen. And everyone was upset and was trying to convince them, like, please, let's just go home. But Paul's mind was made up, so they had no choice but to stop at this bar. So headed back to the boat, they noticed that he started kicking chairs, lifting his hands, and his fingers started doing whatever they normally do when he gets too wasted. And so they was like, okay, hey, maybe you shouldn't drive. And he was like, no. He started yelling at them. He would cuss at them. Anybody that said something about not driving the boat got cussed out. And so at this point, everyone is kind of walking on eggshells around him, but still, the guys in the group, they're trying to like, come on, man, and it just wasn't working. So everybody gets on the boat and he's driving so scary. It's scaring everybody, even the guys of the group. And Paul just would walk away from the steering wheel and Connor would grab it. So Connor knows how to drive boats too. And that's the reason why Connor was like, bro, let me drive. I think I could do it. And Paul would cuss him out. No, you're not driving my boat. And so Miley was like, if you're going to keep walking away from the steering wheel, at least let somebody drive it. Well, he cussed her out and was like, you shut the F up and sit the F down. And things just started to quickly get ugly. Everyone is arguing with him at this point. And Paul looks at his ex-girlfriend Morgan and says, why don't you have my back? And Morgan is like, well, why would I have your back when you're drunk, you're cussing us out and acting crazy? And Paul told her, you want to know what's crazy? What's crazy is your dad can't afford to support his family. And that made Morgan very upset. She busted out crying. And I guess because she was already hurt, Paul felt like that wasn't good enough. He really felt the need to kick her while she was down. And he went over there and literally slapped her. And everybody in the group has said you could tell that wasn't the first time that had happened. And so things are starting to get ugly and they're arguing, screaming and yelling. He's driving crazy. And all of a sudden they hit a bridge and the back of the boat goes up and pushes everybody off. It's dark, foggy. Nobody can see anything. All they know is everybody made it out of the water except for Mallory. Anthony jumps back in the water when he realized his girlfriend is still under there. He would go down there and stay as long as he could, and then he'd come back up, and then he'd catch his breath and he'd go right back down there. He did it over and over and over again. And while he's doing that, Connor calls 911.
What bridge is this? Oh, what bridge?
911, where's your emergency? Hello? Police, fire, ambulance? Hello?
We're in a boat crash on Arthur Street.
Whereabouts on Arthur Street?
In Arthur Street, the only bridge on Arthur Street.
So when the police gets there, Morgan's finger is cut. Paul is down to his underwear. Connor's jaw is so messed up and it's bleeding. And Anthony's shoulder is dislocated. However, no one wants to leave because Mallory is missing. But all Paul keeps saying is that he needs to call his grandfather.
Right there away from me. Bro, you smiling like it's funny. Sit down. My girlfriend gone, bro. You think it's funny?
So they eventually get everybody to the hospital. And guess who comes walking down the hospital hallways? Paul's father, Alec Murdaugh, and Paul's grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh. They asked Connor, was he okay? He said yes. They told him to keep quiet, and they got his back. They said, don't say nothing. They tried their hardest to get into the girls' room, but the nurses would not let them. So at this point, Mallory, the missing girl, her parents are now at the hospital. And she's running hysterical down the hallway. She sees Paul's father and she goes to him and she's like, did they find Mallory? And he said, who? And she said, Mallory Beach, she's missing. And he said, oh, we all know how that's going to end up. That is the most demeaning, emotionless, rude, distasteful answer you could ever give a mother whose child is missing. Paul Murdaugh and his father and his grandfather lied and told everybody that Connor was driving. And then they reached out to Connor's parents and said, we're going to represent him. We got him, don't you worry. And once everyone got out the hospital, they wanted to go back to the crime scene because they needed to be there. They had to be there in hopes that Mallory was going to be found. However, they wasn't letting nobody down where the water was, not even Mallory's mother. And then here comes Maggie Murdaugh and Alec Murdaugh, which is Paul's mom and dad, are driving through, and the police let them drive right down to the crime of the scene. Now, what is the wife? What is Maggie Murdaugh doing? So it was more so, we need to protect our son more than caring about the loss of this child. They even let Alec's brother move the boat from the crime scene. How are they able to touch evidence? If this girl is missing, why are y'all allowed to touch the boat, move the boat, and do what you want with it? This family is so powerful. They were above the law. And this poor mother is at the very top, can't see anything, can't see what they're doing, just standing there waiting patiently. And so Paul's mother told one of the other mothers, what if they never find her though? And it's just like, why would you even say that? So it seems like the selfishness doesn't fall too far from the tree. The whole family seemed like, as long as it ain't us, as long as it ain't a death in my family, I got to protect mine. So it just seemed like all of the police, anybody in authority, is working for the Murdaughs, to the point they will turn a blind eye to the Murdaugh kids who have done wrong. And then to make things even worse, there was a rumor around town that the Murdaughs could make anybody disappear. And the fact that they were trying to pin this whole boat driving thing on Connor started to get scared, and he would ask his father, are they going to kill me if I tell the truth? And at that point, you rather just go with the lie, knowing that these people are so above the law. They don't care what's right and wrong. You just have to do what they say so that you can save your own life. So about a week later, thank you, God, they find Mallory's body. But just as fast as closure came to Mallory's mother, it's just as fast as fear came. Because now that they have a dead body, now somebody has to be responsible for it. And the Murdaughs ain't having that their child is going to be responsible. The baby, my baby is going to be responsible for something that is somebody else's fault. So Mallory's mother did what any mother would have done. And she hired a private investigator, because now we have to prove that Paul was the driver. But I need somebody way bigger than me. So the things that the private investigator found was a footage from the store. Paul had used Buster's ID to purchase, loads of alcohol. And then he also called his parents after they left the second bar that night. And he talked on the phone with his mom for 5 minutes. His blood alcohol was 3 times the legal limit. And the things that were being said on the police officers' body cams were not the same things that were being said on the documentation. And on the body cams, they were interviewing everyone. They interviewed everyone except for Paul. And every single person said Paul was driving, Paul was driving, Paul was driving. But in the documentation, they took that part out. So then there is this beautiful job description called biomechanical engineer. And what they do is they take the injuries that you have on your body along with the damages on the boat, and they can determine where each person is sitting or was sitting at the time of the accident and where it threw them off at by the damages of the boat. And that's what they did. And by Connor's damage to his face and where he held onto the bar at, there is no possible way that he was driving when they hit the bridge. Paul was facing 25 years in prison, and all of the lawyers and authorities connected to the case had to now take their hands off of it because of their relation to the Murdaugh family. 3 months later, they went to trial, and everyone was upset because they had him do his mugshot in the regular shirt that he came in. They put no cuffs on him or anything. They were trying to make it look like it was normal treatment, but everybody just made a big deal, like, because he is a Murdaugh. They're going to be very gentle with him and careful with him, but we failed to realize that someone lost their life because of his irresponsible ways. The case ended up getting continued, and he did no jail time. So, of course, he lost all his friends, but did that really bother him? Because over the next 2 years, he was partying and still getting pulled over by the police for speeding and not getting any tickets. And, there was really no consequence. Well, on June 7th, 2021, something happened that would shock the entire town.
911, where's your emergency?
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child just got badly.
Okay, you said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Sir?
You said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Yes, sir. 4147 Moselle Road.
Stay on the line with me, okay? Yes, sir. Stay on the line with me, okay?
Connor County Communications.
Collison, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line calling from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot.
Okay, and so give me the address again.
Alec was home and he decided to take a nap. But once he took a nap, he realized nobody was home, or so he thought no one was home because the place is so big, But he texted his wife, Maggie, and he said, I'm going to check on my parents. His parents were sick. He said, I'm going to check on my parents. I'll be back. He said by the time he got back at 10:15, that's when he found his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, murdered. They were outside by the dog kennels. Maggie had got shot in her back as if she was running from something. And then Paul was shot in his chest and his head. So everything seemed to go very quiet after that. And then randomly one day, his brother John did a interview.
And as soon as I answered the phone, I knew something was wrong. No, man. He just told me. He said, come as fast as you can. Paul and Maggie have been hurt.
His voice, the fear, he was just distraught. But the person that did this is out there, and there's information, however big or however small it is.
Did they have any enemies?
I really don't know of any enemies. You hear all this.
I can't help but to notice that the emotionless family that has no heart for anybody else's trauma now wants sympathy for their trauma. There was a $100,000 reward for anybody that knew anything, any type of leads of who had done this to Maggie and Paul. And of course, everyone thought maybe it was a retaliation from the boat crash. And so, of course, they came for everybody that was a part of that friends group on the boat that day. And they ran tests, DNA tests, did hair samples, the lava swab. They made sure to interrogate everyone in the friend group, because now Paul is the victim and not the bad guy. And someone is going to pay. Someone is going to pay because his life was worth more than Mallory's. And this death opened up so much. If there was any skeletons in the closet of this family, this was the time that they were about to come out. So now the public can't help to remember this mysterious death that turned into a cold case back on July 8th, 2015. There was a young boy in high school. His name was Stephen Smith.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
Hello, I just going down the Crocketville Road. I see somebody laying out.
What road are you, what's the name of the highway that you're on?
I know it's Crocketville Road.
Just know it's Crocketville Road.
He was found dead on the road. And in the report, it said foul play because it was supposed to be a hit and run, but his shoes were loose fitting and they were still on his feet. The way that he was laying was not as if he had got hit by a car, and he had a lot of force trauma to his head only, as if he had been hit with a rock or an object like a bat or something. And one of the names that was in the report was Buster Murdaugh, which is Paul's brother. So the backstory about Stephen, he was very confident in who he was, and a lot of people took to him because he didn't care about your opinion. And he had a thing for Buster because he was tutoring Buster, and they ended up being intimate. Well, Stephen doesn't care about people's opinion. Buster does, because that's how he was raised, that reputation is everything. Reputation is worth more than being a good person and having a good heart. You save your reputation no matter what. But Stephen was wanting to tell everybody that him and Buster was lovers, and Buster didn't want that, and neither did Buster's father. And the day after the funeral, Alec's brother went up to Stephen's family and said, "We're going to take over this case free of charge. Don't worry about anything." Well, Stephen doesn't care about people's opinion. Buster does, because that's how he was raised, that reputation is everything. Reputation is worth more than being a good person and having a good heart. You save your reputation no matter what. But the case went cold. Nothing had happened. And that's what made Stephen's mom secretly hire a private investigator. And after the private investigator called around and questioned everybody, there was one name that kept coming up, and that was Paul's brother, Buster Murdaugh. Another mystery skeleton that came out of the closet was on February 2nd, 2018, Maggie called 911.
She's bleeding from the head.
Yes.
Okay. How old is she?
I'm not sure, like 58 maybe.
Do you know if she fell from standing or not?
No. No.
Where she fell from?
She fell going up the steps, up the brick steps.
Gloria was the housekeeper. And one day as she was walking up the steps, she tripped over the dogs and she fell backwards. And that's how she lost her life. Gloria had worked for them for 20 years and she raised Paul. Paul was very heartbroken about her death. Their way of giving back to Gloria, just to say thank you for all your hard work, was to make sure they took care of her two sons. Alex was going to file an insurance claim against himself since it was his dogs that did it, and then take the money and give it to Gloria's two sons. And that made everybody in the family just feel worthy and feel like they had did something great. That was their way of saying thank you to Gloria. And like I said, because of Maggie and Paul's death, this opened up a lot of questions. And due to this, they reopened the investigation of Stephen Smith, and it went out into the press. So everyone was happy. They did like a newspaper article, and they didn't say the Murdaugh's name, but they made sure that they put little hints like a big family who is untouchable, a big family who is above the law in a small town, you know? And they were just saying like they're doing research and investigation if anybody has anything come out, and it made the news, and it made the police get back on it and open up the investigation. So just when we think it can't get no worse, right? September 4th, 2021, Alex calls 911.
Hampton County 911 was emergency. I got a flat tire, and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me. And when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me. Oh, okay. Were you shot? Yes, but I mean, I'm okay. You shot where? Where were you shot at? Huh? Did they actually shoot you, or they tried to shoot you? They shot me, but... okay, where, you need EMS? Well, I mean, yes, I can't drive. Okay. And I'm bleeding a lot.
He said that he was changing a tire on the side of the road and he got shot in his head. Now, at this point, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, somebody's after them due to, like, it just seems like this family has done a lot of bad things to people and somebody's fed up, you know? Because just like you care about your family, I care about mine. And you know what they say, don't mess with the quiet ones. Somebody wants you to feel this hurt, right? So it goes quiet, and his lawyer actually does this random interview, admitting that it was actually a suicide attempt. And he just, with the loss of his son and his wife, it has just been very heavy on him. He couldn't take it anymore, but he figured to help his son, who is alive, his son Buster, out, he would have somebody else shoot him for the insurance. And then he admitted that he is addicted to opioids. So he goes straight to a rehab. They find out who is this person that helped him with this suicide attempt, and his name is Curtis Smith. They immediately take Curtis Smith to jail. So now this investigation is getting so deep, like it is literally snowballing into a mess. And nationwide, everybody is all over this story. There is a YouTuber named Eric Alon, and he got wind of this, and he decided to drive his drone over top of the Murdaugh's family house as the police was there taking things out of the house. He's like, what can I see them take out? But once he got there, police was already gone. But guess who he saw taking guns out of the house through his drone? The brother John. So my brother, who had this beautiful, beautiful life, making millions of dollars, had 1,700 acres of land, had a housekeeper, has now lost his son and wife, is addicted to drugs, and is in rehab. And he lost his housekeeper. And now I'm caught taking things out the house. So while all of this is happening, like the snowball is getting bigger. Gloria's family, Gloria's the housekeeper. Gloria's family finds out there was a death settlement and they never saw the money. Remember how he said he was going to file the insurance claim and give her they never saw that money. So they hire lawyers to figure out what's going on. So the lawyers is like, okay, let's just call their lawyers. It's probably in a trust fund, no big deal. And when they call and tell them what they're there for, they have no response for them. They're just very quiet. Now, we ain't going to call you back. And so the lawyer's like, oh, really? This was done on purpose. Okay. So they dug deeper into it and they found out even more stuff. Like it never ends, right? They found out that not only was it 14 million, 14.3 million to be exact, that was supposed to go to Gloria's two sons and never did. He's also been stealing money from his great-grandfather's law firm. and had been fired well before Maggie, his wife, and his son Paul was murdered. You lost your job before they were murdered. Authorities immediately took him to jail from rehab. Like, joke's up. Come on. Went to jail. The judge denied his bond. So then he had his son Buster out gambling for him. And it made the news. So here we are a year later. Now it's time for trial, and he is facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during a crime and tax evasion from making $14 million in 9 years. So much came out during this. It came out that his family's law firm sat him down and said, "We know what you've been doing. You have stolen millions of dollars from us, and we're going to let you go. You are now no longer a part of your great-grandfather's business." Then there's documentation showing that Maggie hired a forensic financial attorney. Then she hired a divorce attorney. Documentation also proved that Buster got expelled from law school for plagiarism. Look at the fruits of your labor, Alex. You are the leader of your family. And look at how they follow you, because image is so important. You never taught them about consequences. You taught them to get success, you got to cheat your way to success. All he cared about was image. And it wasn't looking good for the image for anybody to find out that he was addicted to drugs. And that's why they got rid of Gloria, the housekeeper, because Gloria found drugs underneath the bed. The image was not for Buster to be announced as gay. And that's the reason why they had to get rid of Stephen. The image was not for Paul to be deemed as an alcoholic at such a young age. So that's why they tried to pin it on Connor. The image was not to have a failing marriage. That's why you just got rid of everybody. I much rather look like a victim, like the community attacked us.
Yes, sir. This is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious. Okay. He's been getting punched. I know that's what it is. Okay.
Because the image is not going to if we show who we really are, that's not good for the image. You forgot to teach them about consequences. You forgot to teach them about having a good heart. You forgot to teach them that what you put in life is what you get out of life. But God has a funny way of teaching you anyways. He has a funny way of teaching your kids anyways. And we get to see this example through Alex Murdaugh today, that karma will come back full circle. This man got 2 life sentences in jail. He thought he was above the law. The law enabled him so many times, just like Paul, his son. He didn't know about consequences because he got away with everything. And then when you finally are faced with the real consequence, you can't take it because you're such a baby at heart. You never matured. His mugshot today has karma all over his face. He looks lifeless. He looks pale. Your family has hurt so many people, and now all of their blood is on your hands. All 5 deaths, I don't care who did it, all 5 deaths was in connection to Alec, the leader of all of this, all in the name of image. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it to the end, give me a blue heart. Post notification goes to... Thank you so much for having your post notifications on. Shout out to you for being the first to comment on the last video. If you would like to see more Family Feud true crime cases, then click right here. If you would like to subscribe to this channel so that you never miss another video, then click right here. I love you, and I will see you guys in the next true crime.